It's time for a midsummer garden tour to show the pathway leading out to the gardens and the greenhouse. And here's some of our pollinator sunflowers and cosmos blooming here. We have a lot of flowers for the pollinators to bring them in, including petunias, which have gone kind of wild, and the butterfly bush, which is in full bloom, and it's attracting a lot of the butterflies. We have a giant and the black swallowtail and the eastern tiger swallowtail. Then we come up to the raised beds. You see some more cosmos blooming over here, and zinnias, and more sunflower down here. We garden all with raised beds. I have some alyssum planted here, which attracts the beneficial insects of a type of wasp and things like that. There's some basil plants in the end of this bed. This is a green zucchini plant here. It's massive. It's got a lot of squash in it that we've been harvesting. And next to it is a yellow zucchini, which is also pretty massive. And we've been harvesting a lot of zucchini out of this one as well. Then we have the peppers on the end, and you can see that the banana peppers have gone really wild with producing peppers, and same with the jalapenos. And the bell peppers, there's about 6 or 8 bell peppers on each plant. Bed next to it is the bush beans. These are Blue Lake bush beans. They got beat down by the wind just recently, and they're coming back, but we're picking every other day from those. And then we come across next to it, we have some tomato plants. This is a small cherry tomato plant, which is loaded with blooms and with cherries. And next to it is a couple Golden Jubilee yellow tomatoes. And there's probably 3 or 4 dozen tomatoes in there. And we're seeing some wilt from the temperatures. It's been in the 90s now for over 10 days. And it's really affecting the gardens. This bed is about finished. It had onions, beets in it. We've harvested most of them. Next to it is some carrots and some Merlot leaf lettuce and some spinach, which is also suffering from the heat that we've been having. On the back side of the tomato plants are the eggplants, which are in bloom, and they're starting to set fruit. They're massive plants this year, doing really well. Back over on this bed with the Blue Lake bush beans, and there's kale. That's a lacinato kale, also known as dinosaur kale. And this is Swiss chard. It's ruby red Swiss chard. And then again on this side is the same plants of the zucchini and pepper plants. And give you a close-up of some of the peppers or squash that's in this yellow zucchini plant. We've been picking 3 and 4 squash out of this plant every day. So these are the plants that's up front. Over on the edges is rhubarb plants, which are pretty much finished for the year. You can't harvest the rhubarb after 1st July. Then we can walk out to the north garden where the arbor is, walk past the compost bin. Got some gourds planted against a fence over here. There's a 3-bin compost bin, and then there's 2 Jora JK270 compost bins. This is an autumn clematis, which will be blooming in about a month. Next to it is comfrey plants, which we use for mulching. And then these are our 2 north beds, which are on an arbor. We have the pole beans planted on the arbor, and the rest of this bed in the near future will be planted into the fall carrots and beet plants. Right now it's pretty much vacant. There's another zucchini plant here, which should be starting to mature pretty shortly. These are young ones that I planted. You can see the pole beans here climbing the fence. On the other side of the arbor are the cucumber plants, and they're now coming along. They're young cucumbers in there. They're probably inch and a half, 2 inches long, something like that. And then we have more green onions there, planted in the wood chips. The camera shut off on me because of the heat, so I had to restart it here. So I'll pick up, I think, where I left off, and I'll edit it to make sure it is. Again, this was the far north beds that are on the arbor with the cucumbers and onions. And growing in the wood chips are the winter squash. This is a red curry squash growing over here. And the one over here is a butternut squash. And they're now starting to bloom and starting to spread out. And these are the last of the green onions. But this bed is a very nice bed. I love this arbor. I love to be able to walk through it and harvest the beans and the cucumbers and etc., whatever we happen to be growing here. It's a very nice environment when the beans totally cover it. So that pretty much concludes the tour of the garden for this mid-summer. Work back towards the house. There's the greenhouse with the exhaust vent, and it's running right now, trying to cool it down. There's nothing growing in the greenhouse because it gets over 100 degrees during the daytime, during the heat. And you may be able to hear the exhaust fan running there. But we love this greenhouse. Had a lot of productivity this winter from it. And we're coming back towards the main garden beds. And again, there's the rhubarb plants growing here. This was an experiment in growing peppers in a 3-gallon container. It hasn't worked well because it's impossible to keep the moisture correct for the plants when it's in the 90s for day after day after day. So we're back up to the beds with the peppers and the beans and the tomatoes and the squash that you can see here. And then the pollinator plants. These are some cleomes blooming here that came up wild from last year's seeds, and I'm going to try and collect seeds and start some more of those next year. I love those plants. The cleome is also called a spider plant because of the nature of the bloom, and the butterflies and the bees love the flowers of the cleome plants. So we're going to try and get some more of those next year. But there's the path back to the house, and that concludes the summer tour of the gardens. Thanks for watching.